So, in your most recent publication, Oyama Pink Shale, you do maintain a very conversational loose style. In deciding how to lay the poem on the page, do you read the poem aloud or is it more of a visual representation?
I definitely read the poem aloud at some point, but usually, because I write first drafts by hand, sometimes I do directly onto the computer too, but that it almost feels like a kind of sculpting process. The line, you know, kind of like, and then when it feels like, you know, I've got a draft, at some point in the process, I will read it aloud, and there I may feel like there's some problem with delineation, which is to say the rhythm. But the rhythm isn't just delineation, the rhythm is also particular words and their relationships within the line. So it's like, you can, you know, I always tell students this, you can always tell, like read your poem aloud and you'll feel that it feels funny in your mouth if it's not working properly. So how are you going to fix it? I don't know. Get rid of it, rewrite it, delineate it differently, put it somewhere else. It's sort of a, yeah. So I think I kind of believe in the rhythm of natural speech. But that's not to say there is such a thing as natural speech for everybody. So your rhythm of your natural speech would come across to me as a reader as a pleasure to see and experience on the page, just as hopefully mine does to readers. Yeah.
Your poetry from the paper Sunday appears to have a more abstract feel when compared to some of your most recent works, like Oyama Pink Shale, that feel more anchored in a moment or an event. So can you speak a bit on the transformation of your writing in that context?
That's a great question. And it's interesting to hear you describe it in that way, you know, because you often don't know what you're doing. In fact, 99% of the time you don't know what you're doing. And then in retrospect, you know, or someone asks a question like the one you just did, you think, I think it's a process of sort of gaining in a confidence that you don't, you know, things don't have to have this sort of aura of significance or something like that they can stand for themselves. It's a kind of, I think, sometimes as poets, writers get older, there's a relaxation. You stop trying so hard, or you stop caring so much what anybody's going to think, right? And so I think that could account for some of it. But also, it's interesting that I think what also can account for that is the move from Vancouver to here, in Kelowna, where it's just a place that I feel more grounded here in. Vancouver was always a place that I never felt grounded in. So I think it could be literally, just you know, a fact of place, of the impact of place.
So with 9 published works of poetry now, it's clear that you certainly have a wealth of work. But what are the poems that don't make it into your final pieces? Is that something that you ever revisit for inspiration or to rework for future publication?
Again, a great question. I don't write that much, really. And so there really usually isn't a huge amount of material left over. Usually what happens is, or what has happened in the past, is a book comes out and then I write some more and then another book. Most of that goes into the next book and so on and so on. And there was a fair amount that was culled from Oyama Pink Shale. And in retrospect now, I think that maybe the book was a little too thin, a little too, you know, because of that. And it may have been that those pieces needed to be reworked, or were just not, or maybe the whole manuscript wasn't quite ready yet, I don't know. But I don't have a lot I mean, I have a lot of first early drafts of poems that ultimately wind up published. And more often than not, I go back and I find energies and images there and life, just plain life, in those early drafts has been excised in the editing process by what turns out. But at the time, you think, oh, I'm so glad I got rid of that embarrassing thing, right? Now this is so much better. and then, you know, a couple of years later, you're going through your files. It's like, I wrote that. Wow. You know, like that's so much more, you know, interesting than this, you know, edited, worked on thing that wound up published. So, but that's not to say that happens all the time. I mean, there are equally, you know, you look at the old drafts and go, oh my God, you know,
Yeah, no, I can
the, you know, the
understand
shitty
that
first
one.
draft, and especially
Yeah.
if you keep them.
Yeah, no.
They say you should, but I'm not so sure. You know.